Do you want to be the coolest kid amongst your friend? You want to be macroing, microing as quickly as possible, the most efficient as you can, dominating your opponents on the ladder? Well, this is for you. Hotkey guide. Without further ado, let's jump into it. If you already know what hotkeying is and why you should do it and why you should get better at it, then skip on to the next part. There's timestamps down below. But if you don't, hotkeying is essentially replacing that necessary movement with your mouse and your pointer and clicking, which is a lot slower, to a shortcut. It's just shortcutting everything for you. It's macroing and microing to the best of your ability so that you can quickly jump around the map and you don't have to be using your mouse as much, which will be a lot slower. Now, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. Hotkeying is not essential. There are plenty of pro players like A's, for example, that barely uses hotkeys and they are extremely good players. I'm not saying it's a necessity, but I'm saying it definitely helps your sort of brain training with the game. And also it just gives you that extra edge as well if you need it when you're trying to be as competitive as possible. So that's out the way. Let's get into the first part. Right, guys, first thing you need to do once you've got your beautiful game loaded on the menu screen, you're going to be going down to options. You're going to be going into the hotkey section, and then what you're going to be doing is you're then going to be hovering over to the juicy little general game. Hotkeys will already be selected for you. Go down, there's key bindings. Now make sure that it's on default. Now the reason that it's on default is because we want to stick to the grid-based system rather than the legacy-based system. Now the legacy, if you're new to AoE 3, keep it on default. If you're not, I still think you should go to default. I think if you're very used to playing the legacy, which is a really strange, it's a very illogical sort of way of doing hotkeys, I suggest honestly that you really try and just retrain your brain, use the default layout, which is a grid based, which means that it's going to be running from Q all the way to T, down to B, across to Z. So that's how, if you just look at your keyboard right now, you'll see it be that juicy little collection of keys on the left hand side, which is perfect for your left hand. So there's no sort of stretching or anything unnatural that you need to do. So once you've done that, what you're then going to want to do is make sure that you allow conflicts and that you also have the enable alt right click attack move. Now, kind of a bit awkward here. I didn't actually realize this was a thing. So maybe there's a potential sort of optional thing that you can do here with attack move, which we'll get into very shortly. So once you've done that, then what you're going to need to be doing is go down to the find unit hotkeys section. You want to make sure that you go to this. And then the first thing is, which I've just mentioned, is the attack move. So what you're going to need to make sure to do here is to make sure that that is on the Z key, which it should be. However, you can unbind that key and instead have the enable alt and right click attack move. So there's two options for you. You can either do the Z as attack move or you can do the alt right click attack move, whatever one you want to go with. So once we've done that, then we're going to need to scroll down, and the next one there is going to be the delete selected units. So the delete selected units is probably going to be one of the mouse buttons on the side of your mouse if you have it. I hope you've got two extra buttons on your mouse. And this means that essentially it will select stuff for your walling. So when you get rid of pillarless walls, there's this thing that you can do where it's kind of a more advanced thing where you can save on wood. You can delete the pillars in between the walls, and that is perfect for it because it can, delete those selected units. And mouse 4 is what my delete is for. We'll get on to what the hotkey is for selecting the specific units as we go down the list here. Okay, now if you're going for the attack move as Z, what you need to make sure is you need to go now to the command panel hotkeys, so the second section, and you need to scroll all the way down until you get to row 3, column 1. Now this is an issue. I don't really understand why they've done this, but for some reason, when you have it on the default layout as the grid base, there is a natural conflict with two keys. When you have an explorer selected, an explorer has an ability in the row 3, column 1, which is usually to build a TC or it's to build a stronghold or something like that. If you've got your explorer and your explorer grouped with other military units, what's going to happen is if you're going to want to then click the Z to attack move, it's not going to work. And there's going to be a conflict. So if you're more comfortable with having it as Z, what you need to make sure is the easiest thing is just to unbind that key entirely. It's rarely used, and if you are going to use it, it's only going to delay you in a little bit of extra time just clicking on that button instead of using a hotkey for it. Of course, you can try and figure out a hotkey to use. It might be one all the way to the other side of the keyboard, but I personally would just have that unbound if you're going to use Z as the attack move. If you're going to have Alt and right click as the attack move, then that's absolutely fine. You don't need to change anything. Okay, so now we're going into the third section, which is the find unit hotkeys. You're going to want to rebind the find idle villager button. Now the find idle villager button, this is a huge one because when you're learning the game, not even if you're learning it, but if you're just playing the game, you're going to want to make sure that your idle villagers are always doing something and they're not standing around doing whatever. So the best thing is I like to bind this to the space bar. It's a lovely big key and it's perfect for your thumb, and you can just keep hitting that every now and then to make sure that you don't have any villagers that are idle. A perfect thing with this is the find all villagers button slightly down below, which is the shift and space. So then that makes it even easier for you. You can just do shift and space every time, and then it will select all of the available villagers that are idle, and you can get them to work on doing whatever you need to do. Okay, and the next one is the find all of the selected types. This is one that I said that was on mouse. The deleted version of this is on mouse 4, but on mouse 5, it will actually select it. So what you want to do is, if you're going to do your pillarless walls, you will then use mouse 5 first to find all of that selected type, and then go ahead and click the mouse 4 to delete it. Obviously be careful with this because I've done this when you're learning. I accidentally deleted my TC once in a stream. It was really embarrassing. So just be careful when you're doing this, and you can either, put it on mouse 4 or 5. You can switch them whatever you're comfortable with, but I suggest having it on the mouse, having it as close as possible so you can do that, mainly for the pillarless walls. And then the final one is the command hotkey section right at the bottom there. And the two that we're going to be looking at is the toggle auto repair and the eject units. So the toggle auto repair is really nice. That's the little button at the bottom right. When you select a building, if it's damaged, you can start repairing it again. And the eject units, this one is crucial for ejecting and garrisoning your villagers into your TC. If you want to move them between or around the TC, there's a quicker way of doing it. You can just garrison the villagers and then chuck them out the other side of the TC. Also good if you need to garrison any other military units. If you're playing Inca, for example, it's really good. I use this key a hell of a lot, especially the minute the game starts. I will probably be garrisoning villagers and ejecting them out of the TC. Bit more of an advanced thing, but I suggest you put it on like H and G for the repair and the eject. We've now got our options in a beautiful spot now. We're all ready to go to jump into the game. So let's get into the next part, which is looking at the first things that you do when you start up your game in a 1v1 team game, whatever it is. What's the first things that you should be doing with your hotkeys? Right, we're in real time now. First thing we're going to be doing the minute the game starts is we want to be hotkeying the TC. Now, what I do is I like to hotkey the TC on 4 so that I have my number 1, 2, and 3 available. Now, these are in control groups. This is what this is called. And this is basically creating your own manual hotkeys. So when we were looking in the previous part, we were looking at all of the options. Most of those are already just natural hotkeys that you can use. These ones are man-made hotkeys. They're ones that you can just make up and you can do whatever you want. So for example, if we look here, if I click on my TC, we can either go Control 4 or we can go Shift 4, which adds it. So Shift is adding. Shift adds stuff to the control group. If you use Control and then a number, it will completely wipe it. So if I select my Explorer, I go Control 4. Now, when I'm clicking 4, it's going to the Explorer only. It's not going to the town center. So what we always want to make sure that we do when we start up the game, of course, is make sure that we have our TC hotkeyed, and I like to hotkey my Explorer, and I like to put him on number 3. So what I do is I go number 4. There you go, number 4. Control 4 for number 4 for the TC, and then I get Control 3 for the Explorer. So now I'm going 4, 3, 4, 3. So there we go. So we can switch between the two. And if you double click, it will take it to that location. So that's really good for when we're looking at military units, which we'll look at a little bit later. But there we go. So now we're ready to go. And when we got the TC selected, you can now see that we've got it all in the grid-based layout. So you can see here. Now, what I actually forgot to mention is a really crucial thing. You want to, in your UI options, I believe, you want to make sure it's super crucial you have this selected so it helps you learn where the hotkeys are. Now, I would always have this on no matter what. So make sure that you've got that on. You can see where everything is and how it corresponds. And it's in a grid based. You can see there's the WAS. Look, perfect. So that just helps you learn. And exactly when you select a settler, look at that. Perfect. So you've got the full grid layout. Really, really nice. Let's just do a quick restart. And we'll do the first thing that we want to do when we start into a game. We want to get that TC hotkeyed. We want to get our Explorer hotkeyed. and we want to be going. So there we go. So there we go. TC hotkeyed, Explorer hotkeyed. We're ready to go. And we're making sure now that our villagers are collecting. Then that's the first thing we want to do is make sure that we get a villager queued with Q. Nice and easy. And then we can get our Explorer, go in there, and then we can go back to the TC. We can have a look at the Explorer and go back to the TC. So it's really, really nice, really, really straightforward. So just one final thing on this is the ejecting of the villagers. So if you're new to the game, you've probably seen, you know, more advanced players will do this and then go ahead and chuck them out the other side, just like that. Now, all you need to do is just right-click to garrison. Click on the TC again, then right-click to change the garrison point and go ahead and click G, which is the key that we changed at the start, which is the eject key. So you can see there, I'm going to put them in and then I'm going to eject them that side. I'm going to put them there, I'm going to put them that side. So it just means that, oh, if I want to get them on gold, I can do that. And if I want to get them hunting, I can go and do that. So that's a little bit more advanced, but that's something that you can definitely do. Okay, let's get into the next part, which is your building management with your hotkeys. So we've just looked at what we do when we first start up the game, getting our Explorer, getting our TC, and knowing how to eject and move around villagers. So this is just looking at the buildings and the military buildings. And this is what I like to do. Now, what you can do is you can use the select all of the specific military buildings. You can use the natural hotkeys that you have, but we're going to be using the control groups again. So we're going to be using it manually and creating them how we want them. So normally you have a maximum of 3 different types of military buildings. You have your barracks, your stables, and your artillery foundry or something like that. Some civs have only got 2. But most have 3. So for example, we want to get this villager to go ahead and build a barracks. So we're going to do just using the hotkeys there. We're using F, build a barracks, lovely. And we're going to go ahead and build a stables. And then we're going to go ahead and build an artillery foundry. So we've got the 3 buildings here. Okay, so what I tend to do is I just put the barracks, or the one that I'm going to use the most, I put that on 5. So I just go ahead. You can either do shift or you can do control for this. So I'm going to do control 5. There we go. Stables, control 6, and artillery control 7, because that's the one that I'm going to use the least amount. So I can just immediately go to my barracks here, and then I can start using the Q, W, and E there. You can see the hotkeys. I can then start training some long bowmen. Now, if I wanted to do another barracks, of course, you want to add to a hotkey group, we go ahead and do the shift. So I'm going to go ahead and do shift 5, and there we go. So now we've got 5 barracks here, and we're all ready to go. Sometimes what can happen is you can accidentally maybe put your TC within the group, and then you've got this issue here, which isn't very pleasant to have. So the easiest thing to do that is just to go ahead, click on your barracks, and then you can use the select all of the same type. That's the one to mouse 4 or mouse 5. So I've got this one on mouse 4, and I can just go ahead and do that, and it will mean that it will select all of the barracks, and I can go ahead and just replace that hotkey for 5 again with control 5, and there we go. So now we've basically taken out the TC there. So there's multiple ways you can do that. That's how I like to do it. 5, 6, and 7 are my military buildings, and then that leaves me with the final hotkeys, which is the 1, 2, and 3, which is for the military. So let's get into that. Okay, you find me in the final part, which is the military. So without further ado, let's go ahead. I've created my 3 different types of military units here. We've got our cav, we've got our longbowmen, and we've got our artillery, which is our grenadiers. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've got the longbow here. I'm going to go ahead and click control 1. So that gets them in the first control group. So we've got them. The cav, all I'm going to do is go ahead and click control 2. Cav is now in the correct control, and finally control 3 for the artillery. What I suggest is that most of the time you're using shift instead of control, because shift creates the hotkey anyway, and it also adds any new units. So make sure that you use shift more than control. The only time we really want to be using control is if we need to change or we need to do something to our hotkeys. We need to replace them for whatever reason or something like that. So what I like to do is do shift, because what I can do is if I've got my longbowman on 1 here, I can go ahead and click 1, and you can see if I double tap, it pulls it back. All I can do is then go, okay, longbowman, I want to get some more. So what do? I go ahead and I click 5, which is my barracks. I then click Q to get some longbowmen. And what I can do is I can then grab these longbowmen here. I can select all of the units of the longbowmen, which is the mouse 4 key of the same type, which I've done. You can see that's what that is right there. And then what I can do is I can go ahead and click Shift 1. That now includes all of the longbowmen. So once they've now been trained, they're all together. And I've got my cav. And then I've got my grenadiers on number 3 as well. The final thing, sorry, is the attack move. So the attack move is Z. So we can go ahead and click Z and then just left click. You can see here, we're probably going to get killed here because I haven't really done much, but you can now start to get them involved and you can use the Z attack move. And that's pretty much it, guys. You know, just make sure, just be careful when you are using multiple hotkeys with different military groups, is that if you don't want them to collide too much, try and just naturally drag them all. And that'll quickly adjust them, because if I show you here quickly, if I've got the cav, they're gonna awkwardly try and cut through the longbowmen. But if I just drag select, if I drag them and then just click that, it just rearranges them and moves them out of the way. That's a little bit more advanced because sometimes artillery can get stuck with your units. So if you are having a bit of trouble, just drag select quickly and you can get them out of the way and stuff like that. So, but there you go, guys. Something that I forgot to mention is the idle villager. So you can see now I've got the idle villager at the top there. It's saying I've got 10. All I need to do is click spacebar. If I click in spacebar, it's going to cycle through all of my settlers that are idle. If I do the shift space, which we changed at the start, it will then select all of them and it will say there's 10 selected, and then I can get them doing whatever. So I can get them all mining gold, or I can get some of them maybe going to do some wood cutting and stuff like that. So that's really, really good. So make sure that you're always creating villagers, so you can just click number 4, click Q, you're queuing them up, and then, okay, we've got idols. I can go ahead and click shift space, and there we go. So you've got all these hotkeys, and it does take some time to get used to, trust me. Don't try to overdo it too much with your knowledge and trying to get used to it. Just slowly just adapt to it and try and understand it. Just start off with the basics, with the TC, with the Explorer, and then start to obviously get the military buildings added, and then you can start using it for actual fights. You can start hotkeying a bit better. And it's just really good because if your military is in a tough spot, you can quickly just click to them, double click, and you can get straight across the map to them and help them. And it just really helps. That's it, guys. So we broke this down into 4 easy chunks. First one was looking at the options, prepping ourselves pre-game, making sure that we've got the default layout, the grid-based is on, making a few sort of manual adjustments in the hotkeys. Second was looking at what you do first when you start a game. So getting that TC hotkey, getting the Explorer hotkeyed, and looking at how to eject villagers, and making sure that we can manage our idle villagers as well with the new hotkey that we assigned. The third was looking at the building sort of management, so the military building management, how to add and, you know, remove buildings and such, and how you should prioritize. And the final, number 4, was the military units sort of management, essentially. How we sort of add units to the hotkey, create new hotkeys, and making sure that it stays on hotkey 1, 2, and 3 for all the different types of military. So, hope you found this really enjoyable, useful. Let me know in the comments below if you think there's anything that I missed, or maybe something that I did wrong, or something that you disagree with. Of course, as I said at the start, a disclaimer, hotkeys does not mean that it's going to mean that you're going to be able to be an absolute boss and a pro at the game. It's just something that can really help for certain players that are struggling with the game and are a little bit slow. Hotkeys can really help, and it just sort of fine-tunes your ability at RTS games, and it's really good. It really sort of carries over into other games as well as Age of Empires 3. So I hope you enjoy this. Let me know what you think. Drop a like if you did, and I'll see you in the next video or the next stream. Catch you guys later.